Thank you so much for the introduction, and thanks, guys, for sticking around. I know it's a bit warm, and we would all need some air. Firstly, I'm humbled to be standing here on stage and talk to you guys today, and also a bit nervous, to be honest. But most of all, I'm super excited to be talking about one of my passions. And some of my colleagues are here, and it's not skateboarding, even though that's like super big passion of mine now, 2 months in. But it's about the possibilities with machine learning. And just a full disclosure first, I'm not an engineer. I have a business background. As you mentioned, I've been building technology companies for the last 10 years. And I was asked to share my thoughts on whether machine learning can reduce or even maybe take out bias in hiring. It's a big topic for 20 minutes. I'm going to share some of my thoughts with you guys, and I'll leave it up to you to make your own decisions. When people talk about machine learning systems, at least for my case, it always turns into this discussion about like us versus them, or them versus us. However, in my mind, it's an extension, a helper, if you may, a servant of ours if it's trained properly. You and I, when we make discussions, basically what we do is we look at the world and we make sense of it by looking for patterns. And then we filter those patterns through what we already think we know and make decisions accordingly. When we talk about handing our decisions over to machines, what we expect is for them to do the same as we do, just better and way faster. So imagine kind of the best version of us, objective, rational, knowing it all. If you look at us humans, we're hindered both by our kind of unconscious assumptions and our simple inability to process huge amounts of information. Machines, on the other hand, they can be taught to filter out irrelevancies out of a decision-making process. They can pluck the most suitable candidates from a kind of a haystack of resumes and guide us based on what it calculates objectively, as best, rather than simply what we believe is the best. We know rationally that even the most unintended discrimination can cost a company significantly, both in terms of money, but also in terms of brand equity. But more importantly, in a relentlessly competitive international business setting, an organization can afford to shut itself off from broader input, more varied people working there, and a larger potential market as a consequence. So from my point of view, machine learning can be a tremendous force for good, and I strongly believe that machine learning can help us reduce and maybe potentially also avoid bias when it comes to hiring. Still, when we talk about bias, we always tend to kind of focus on the usual suspects, such as gender, ethnicity, race, religion, political views. Still, companies are losing a lot of great talent due to what we might call unconscious biases as well. If you think about a recruitment process, a lot of you guys said you were looking or might have been looking for people earlier. And this is typically due to the fact that we humans, we have a limited understanding of what is actually relevant for any given job. We get distracted by spelling mistakes in a CV, this creative candidate that has, colored the headlines on the cover letter in bright purple to stand out, or, attached a dog to their application just to make, be different. That actually happened to me one time. I'm not kidding. And, a bigger problem for us humans is also to actually understand the relevance of experience to any given job. So let's say you're hiring a junior data scientist, and you get an application that has majored in wind engineering. So without knowing for a fact that there's a high transferability between what you learn as a wind engineer and what you're able to, or what you need to do as a data scientist, you might, as a recruiter, disqualify that candidate. Not based on facts, but based on your beliefs individually. by understanding the relevance of any background to any job and showcasing standardized scorecards, instead of CVs of pictures and dogs or spelling mistakes, recruiter can focus on decisions and facts, and also in the jobs, that he or she doesn't really understand. So basically, the actual relevance of a candidate, obviously by focusing on facts, we're also able to reduce the focus on usual suspects. So this is what we do at Relink. So when somebody applies for a job, instead of showcasing a CV or a cover letter, we score that candidate based on that candidate's actual relevance to a job. And that is one example of how machine learning today is, in fact, reducing bias in hiring. And there's also limitations, obviously. Yeah? So that being said, so by stating the fact that in some use cases already today, you can use machine learning to reduce bias or take out bias in the decision-making process in hiring, I think it's also important, when talking about this and trying to answer this question, it's important to remember challenges and pitfalls. The challenge with machines is that they don't really reveal pure objective truth just because they're mathematical. As humans, we have to teach the systems what we consider suitable, train it with information that's relevant, and indicate what outcomes we consider best, both ethically, financially, and also legally. And that data that we train the machines with, it has to be free from bias, conscious or otherwise. So think about that for a second. We have to train the machines with data that is free from bias, conscious or otherwise. That's actually the only way machine learning can help us create systems that are absolutely fair, more productive, and ultimately better for both businesses and the broader society. So if the data training these systems are just as fair and free from conscious and unconscious bias, that's where it can take us. So if we want these systems to be absolutely fair and rational, well, then we would have to be rational as well. Remember, I opened by stating that you guys and I, we make sense of the world by looking at patterns and filtering those patterns through our knowledge and making decisions. Already there, I think we get off the wrong foot, because even though we want to believe that we're rational, honestly, we're not rational. I find this concept of rational irrationality in us human beings super interesting. And I think one of my favorite anecdotes from a book I read talks about the discount. So I'm going to share it with you now. Are you ready? Everybody awake? Okay. I want you to think now. So now, imagine you're out buying a watch. You're buying a watch for $100. You walk into the store, you find the model you want. You're just about to pay, and the guy in the line behind you says, hey, 500 meters down the road, you can get this watch with a $50 discount. That's half price. So if you're anything like me, you would typically get out of the store, walk down, and get that watch for half price. So now, same scenario. But now you've been saving up, you're buying a $7,000 Rolex. You're in the store ready to pay, same scenario happens. This guy tells you, listen, 500 meters down the road, you can get a $50 discount. Same $50. Again, if you're anything like me, you would typically say, I'll buy this watch here. And that's completely irrational, actually. Yeah? So, you guys and I, we are not one bit rational, even though we might think we are, and even though we might want to be. It's actually a super interesting theory also when building a company, such I think a lot of us here is doing. And that points to the challenges, I think, with kind of using machine learning, some people call it AI, to reduce biases, because it's this challenge with the training data. I don't know if you guys ever heard about what's something called algorithmic bias. So like any other bias, it is unfair and results in unfairness. The biggest difference between algorithmic bias and human bias is that algorithms, like viruses, they spread in massive scale at a rapid pace. And of course, that can lead to increased discrimination. Take our software as an example again. So remember I said that what we do is we look at applicants, we score them, and we give a scorecard, instead of So we tell the recruiter what is the relevancy of this candidate individually to this job. And we can do that with any candidates and any jobs. But if our software was trained, so let's say there was one recruiter that consciously really believed that say a physics background is totally, irrelevant for a data scientist position. That's his belief. That's what he thinks. In real life, it doesn't really matter, yeah? Because you'll have his colleagues saying, I totally disagree, let's look at this candidate instead. So the consequences are quite limited. Now let's imagine that this single recruiter was the only person training our models. The only truth that our model sees. The only teacher that our technology has. So what would happen? All of a sudden, his bias, this thought, would make decisions in our system or influence the score that we output in our systems. So instead of, one candidate or maybe 10 applicants being affected, hundreds of thousands of people applying to jobs every month would get a lower score because of this individual, bias, subconscious or conscious. I was asked to share my opinion whether machine learning systems can reduce or even kind of eliminate bias in hiring. I think, while preparing for this talk, I know you guys want an answer, but for me, it's not a yes or no question. So if you ask me if machine learning today can outperform recruiters in making the right decisions when it comes to hiring, yes, definitely. That's happening right now. Does it represent a major opportunity for increased quality and speed in any given hiring process? For sure. Does the technological capabilities we have now represent a huge opportunity? Mark the word, yeah, opportunity to make the global job market more accessible for more people, more fair, more ethical, and more efficient? Yes. The opportunity lies there right now. Is there a dark side of this? Is there a dark side where we might end up making things even worse? Yes, as well. Let's take a step back for a second. When I look at the tech industry in 2017, you guys, me as well, what are we building? We have apps that let you find a person to date in 5 minutes. You can order a helicopter trip to the Hamptons with an app, You can outsource your, laundry or get somebody to walk your dog with an app. I'm quite certain that there is a whole lot about the world that we don't really, understand at all. The real world, not our world, myself included. We call ourselves innovators, but are we really? If you look at these kind of ventures, seriously, are we innovators? We call ourselves problem solvers, but the evidence suggests that the problems we want to solve are usually referred to as first world problems. Way back, at least this is my opinion, way back when this space was just getting started, it seemed that most technologists were, working on bigger problems, real world stuff, ending poverty, ending disease, creating a more equal world. They don't do it because they're gonna, get them a speaking gig at a tech conference or front page of Forbes magazine or even an exit. They did it because technology is about improving the human condition, helping us connect and improve the lives of our fellow human beings. Now, before you chalk me off as a Mother Teresa type, let me bring you back down to earth. Very often in the HR tech world, we forget about the real effects, and this is what we're seeing, and this is, I think, what's driving me and also, my colleagues. What we sometimes forget is what a job actually means to a person. One job can change a life, literally. One job can save a life, one job can ruin a life, and so on. And the right person at the right job can elevate a company to greatness. And obviously, as well, the inverse is true. If we can help people, without bias to get the right job with minimum cost, should we? Or more importantly, if we were able to do that on scale, helping hundreds of thousands of people, why shouldn't we? We should also naturally be aware of the potential pitfalls and make sure that we have a clear understanding of what we want technology to do and what we don't want it to do. If you look at HR technology, not just our company, but if you look at HR technology in general, there's a lot of predictions that we're able to do that we choose not to do. Not because it wouldn't be valuable for companies or people hiring, but because it could potentially create a job market that is, with higher bias and less fairness. The opportunities and responsibilities, really lies with us in terms of what we choose to develop and why. And it's up to us how this plays out. And also, I think, in all honesty, we just can't sit back and hope that technology will make the world a better place. Just as machine learning systems need to be trained by the best version of us, the real fight when it comes to bias starts with us as well. We still keep, at least, again, talking about myself again, we still keep hiring and hanging out with the people that look, and is mostly like ourselves. Sure. Again, back to the question. Yes, I think technology will definitely help us. It's already doing that. Yeah, it can help us, see the blind spot. It can do everything a lot faster. It can help us, connect the dots when we're not able to, just due to our limitations in terms of processing data. But at the end of the day, we still, and for a very long time, we will still be deciding who we hire. Technology is not going to do that. Not yet. And that's why the real fight resides in us. Look, if you're sitting here listening to me, chances are you were born with a set of resources, we all are, yeah? That 95% of the humans on the planet can only imagine to have. And I think, honestly, we're so isolated in our, tech incubators and startup offices and, so busy chasing venture capital that we don't often see the very real problems the rest of the world actually faces. We're some of the smartest, 3 minutes left. One of the smartest, most empowered people that has ever lived. And we can use our minds, our skills, our resources to make this world a truly better place for everybody. It was cost us so little and we could accomplish so much. And HR technology is one way of doing that. If companies focus on how we can use our technology to kind of create more, even distribution of jobs, as an example. And I think if we all kind of think about how we choose to use the immense possibilities with technology and look at kind of real world problems and say, how can we kind of solve something real now? I think we could make a world that we're, seriously super fucking proud of. And I think, that's where I'm going to leave it. We can be better, we can be amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ståle. Is there maybe one question in the audience or so? Somebody has. Could I get the cube? If there's.
I can also hear you. No? Yeah, cool.
So I was wondering how you take your impact beyond the hiring process. So imagine we found the perfect person, the person just found the perfect job. Still, of course, there are biases because we're people.
Yep.
And even though we are aware, I have biases, I'm aware of that. How do you approach that? Do you have a strategy to impact beyond the process itself?
So if I understand your question correctly, do we have a strategy to measure how we impact the reduction of bias? Is that the question, or did?
No. So we have the perfect situation. There's the perfect person for the job.
Yeah.
The perfect job.
Mm-hmm.
Still, there might be biases. For example, say in the company against this person because of whatever their skin color, their taste in clothes or whatever. How do we impact that?
It's a great question, and I think again from my point of view, I think technology can do a lot, but it can't change the way we think. So I think the only way to impact that is by asking ourselves, where does these decisions come from? So I think in real life, because you're asking about us, and I've deliberately not talked too much about our company, but what we deliver is basically, a service that helps you automate, the initial heavy lifting of a recruitment process. So basically, let's say, high volume recruitment companies or enterprise companies, you get, let's say there's 1,000 applicants for a job or 500, whatever. What we do is in that initial screening process, when you go to say, okay, these 10 people is what I want to dig into and focus on, in that process, we see a lot of conscious and unconscious bias as well. So one is that you make decisions based on the fact that you don't really understand the relevancy of a skill set from another country that actually is absolutely equal to the skill set you're asking for. But since you don't know the skills, you're not able to kind of identify those that keyword pattern cognitively as a recruiter. So that's one bias. Another bias is that I think by standardizing scorecards or standardizing the information you look at as a recruiter, you're able to kind of just look at the mere facts in terms of the relevance of this individual rather than all the other fuss. Again, picture or name, all these things that affect both kind of conscious and subconscious biases. When it comes to the last stretch of that process, it's really hard. There's a lot of companies trying to kind of do that by augmenting video interviewing and putting like facial recognition technology so that you're able to kind of identify, micro expressions. So the technology tells you how this individual performs in the video interview without you actually looking at the individual. But I mean, it's hard. At the end of the day, the fight starts with us, I think, with me as well. So
thank you very much, Ståle. Give him applause.
Thank you.